Alright, this is question number 5, and it asks us to find, it says the length of a rectangle is 5 centimeters less than twice its width. The perimeter of the rectangle is 50. What are the dimensions of the rectangle? So the first thing we probably need to do here is just start with a diagram, and the diagram should be a rectangle. So let's create a rectangle here, and then we'll go ahead and label what we can of the rectangle. It says the length, so it's telling me about length here, of a rectangle is 5 centimeters less than twice its width. It told me a lot about the length compared to the width, but it told me nothing about the width. So I'm going to go ahead and label the width of this rectangle W. I need to pick a variable for it because I know nothing about it. And now let's read back again. The length of the rectangle is 5 centimeters less. Well, how do I get 5 less than something? To get 5 less than something, I have to subtract 5. So I need to figure out what the something is I'm subtracting 5 from. It says 5 less than twice its width. Well, I know its width is W, so twice its width was 2W. Let's read that again and see if it makes sense. The length of a rectangle is 5 centimeters less, so that's minus 5 from something. 5 centimeters less than twice its width. So we're taking 5 away from twice its width. We should understand that if this width is W, this width is also W, because rectangles have the same width distance on both sides here. And if the top is 2W minus 5, the bottom is also 2W minus 5. So we're set up with our rectangle. All we need to do next is label the perimeter. It says the perimeter is 50 centimeters. So P is 50. Now we need an equation. They want to know the dimensions. Dimensions is length and width. So that's what we're trying to find. The length and the width. That's the dimensions. Well, we know perimeter is just add up all the sides. So let's add up all the sides. If I add W plus the other width W plus the top, which is 2W minus 5, plus the bottom, which is 2W minus 5, it's supposed to equal the whole perimeter, which we were told is 50. Let's clean this up. I have 2W, plus 2 more is 4W, plus 2 more is 6W, so I have 6W. Minus 5 and minus 5 is a total of negative 10 or minus 10, and that equals 50. Let's go ahead and start isolating the W by adding 10 to both sides. The result there is 6W is equal to 50 plus 10 is 60. And then we're going to go ahead and divide both sides by 6. The result there is W is equal to 60 divided by 6 is 10. So we know our width is 10. Let's go ahead and write that down because that's one of our answers. Our width is 10, and our units here is centimeters. And our length is, well, if I take 10 and plug it in here, 2 times 10 is 20, minus 5 is 15. 10 and 15 centimeters. If we check this, if we add up 2 widths and 2 lengths, we'd have 20 plus 30. That does equal 50, so that's a pretty good check. And we have our final answer. Our width is 10 centimeters, and our length is 15 centimeters. Alright, this problem gives us Carlos and Maria drove a total of 270 miles in 5.1 hours. Carlos drove the first part of the trip and averaged 48 miles per hour. Maria drove the remainder of the trip and averaged 55 miles per hour. For approximately how many hours did Maria drive? That's the question. How many hours did Maria drive? Round our answer to the nearest tenth if necessary. Alright, let's set this up. We're going to need a table to record all this information in, so let's create that table. Start with a big old rectangle. And we'll go ahead and put some lines on there. to set this up. Oops, that's not going to work. Doesn't have to be perfect here, we just need a place to record the information. Alright, we know that this is a rate times time equals distance problem. So we've got rate times time is equal to distance. We can see in the problem it's talking about distance here, time here, and rate there. So rates, times, and distances are all over, and the question is about time. So we've got Carlos and Maria driving two separate legs of a trip, or two separate parts of a trip. It says Carlos's rate, his speed, is about 48 miles per hour average, while Maria averages 55 miles per hour. The time is unknown. They want to know how many hours Maria drove, and so let's go ahead and let her time be x. They say the total time is 5.1 hours. So Carlos has 5.1 minus x hours to drive. If the total's 5.1 and Maria used up x hours, there are 5.1 minus x hours left for Carlos. Rate times time equals distance, so Maria's distance is 55 times x, or 55x, and Carlos's distance is 48 times 5.1 minus x. And we'll show that with parentheses. It says the total distance is 270 miles, so we'll put totals at the bottom. Now it should work out that the distance that Carlos drove plus the distance that Maria drove should equal the total distance, because they're the only two that drove and they drove the entire way. So let's set up an equation that states that. So let's take Carlos's distance, which is 48, times 5.1 minus x. That's Carlos's distance, and we'll add to that Maria's distance, which is 55x. That needs to equal a total distance of 270 miles. We have our equation, now we just need to solve. Let's go ahead and distribute this 48. 48 times 5.1 is 224.8. And of course 48 times negative x is negative 48x. Plus the 55x we still have here still equals 270. Let's combine like terms. Negative 48x and positive 55x is going to be 7x. So I've got 224.8 plus 7x is equal to 270. I need to start getting that x term by itself, so let's subtract the 224.8 from both sides. The result here is 7x equals, let's see, 270 minus 224.8 is 25.2. And we'll go ahead and divide both sides by 7 to get x by itself. The result is x is equal to 25.2 divided by 7, rounded to the nearest tenth, as we were asked to in the directions, is approximately 3.6. So our final answer here is 3.6 hours. And we're done. Number 7 is a question about the Pythagorean theorem. It's not the Pythagorean theorem, it should be the Pythagorean theorem. It says find the length of the missing side, C in this case, if necessary round to the nearest tenth. So let's see what we've got here. We should know the Pythagorean theorem says that a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, where a and b are the lengths of sides And it's really important to know that C is always the hypotenuse. Okay, the hypotenuse is always the long side that's across from the right angle. So it's always going to be opposite the right angle. It's never going to be one of the sides that makes the right angle, because those are the legs. So we can put in 5 squared plus 10 squared and set that equal to this side as C squared. 5 squared is 25. 10 squared is 100. So 25 plus 100 is still equal to C squared. 25 plus 100 is 125. So 125 equals C squared. But we don't want to know C squared. We want to know C. So let's take the square root of both sides. Now technically here we'd get a positive and a negative square root in the equation, but we know that this distance is positive, so we're just going to keep the positive value. We don't need a negative value. And the square root of 125 rounded to the nearest tenth is about 11.2. So C is approximately 11.2. And we're not given any units, so we'll stop right here. Okay, question 8 gives us a scuba diver. He has a taut rope connecting the dive boat to an anchor on the ocean floor. The rope is 110 feet long. The water's 40 feet deep. The question: to the nearest tenth of a foot, how far is the anchor from the point directly below the boat? So let's go ahead and draw some diagrams here. Let's put our boat right here. Let's put a point directly below the boat right here. And let's put our anchor out here somewhere. So it says that the distance, the water's 40 feet deep. So this has to be 40 feet from the boat to a point directly below the boat. And it says our anchor has a rope that's 110 feet long. So it's going out to our anchor here at 110 feet. The question: to the nearest foot, how far is the anchor down here, this is our anchor, from a point directly below the boat? So they want to know this distance. This would be a right angle, and this distance would be x. So again, this is a Pythagorean theorem type question. We're just going to apply the Pythagorean theorem. So we'll take one of the legs, which is x, and square it. Add it to another leg, which is 40 squared, and that will equal the hypotenuse. Remember, the hypotenuse is always the long side across from the right angle. That'll equal the hypotenuse squared. So x squared will equal 110 squared minus 40 squared. X would equal the square root of, because we got to get the square off of the x, 110 squared minus 40 squared. Let's clean that up a little bit. 110 squared minus 40 squared. So I picked up a calculator and I put this in. I didn't take time to put these in a calculator. I just said I've got to pick up a calculator anyway. I'll just put it in all at once. So the square root of 110 squared minus 40 squared to the nearest tenth of a foot comes out to 100 approximately. This is rounded. 102.5 feet. So that's my final answer. 102.5 feet. Alright, this is concept 14, number 9, and we're asked to solve the inequality. So let's go ahead and solve here. We've got p plus 12 minus 2 times p minus 20. Let's distribute this negative 2. So keep the p plus 12. Distribute the negative 2, so negative 2 times p is negative 2p. And negative 2 times negative 20 is positive 40. And that's greater than 0 still. Let's combine like terms. I notice I have a p and a negative 2p. 1p minus 2p is negative 1p, or just negative p. I have a 12 and a positive 40. If I add those together, I get 52. So negative p plus 52 is greater than 0. I'm going to go ahead and subtract the 52 from both sides because I'm trying to isolate this negative p-value. And the result there is negative p is greater than negative 52. I don't want to know negative p, I want to know positive p, so I'm going to divide both sides by -1. That'll basically turn this to positive. But recall that when we do that, we have to flip over the inequality symbol. So this greater than becomes a less than in the process of dividing by a negative number. The left side is p, the right side now is positive 52. So my answer for the inequality is p is less than 52. And I missed, but you get the gist. This is number 8. It looks a little simpler than this is number 10. It looks a little simpler than number 9. Let's go ahead and solve this. I noticed that I could, if I wanted to, distribute the 4, but I'm going to choose to divide the 4 because it goes into 20 so nicely. So I've got a minus 5 is what's left on the left side of the inequality is greater than 20 divided by 4 is 5. Now I'm just going to go ahead and solve for a by adding 5 to both sides. And the result here is a is greater than 5 plus 5 is 10. That should do it for this problem. That's our final answer. Oops, I thought I grabbed this tool. Final answer, a is greater than 10. Again, not quite clean, but you get my gist. Alright, number 11, solving inequalities still. Let's go ahead and keep the left side. 2 plus 10x is still greater than or equal to 8 times, let's read this, 8 times x is 8x, and 8 times 2 is 12. Excuse me, 16. My pen's starting to act up on me a little bit here. Let's see if we can make it through this problem. I want to get all the x's on one side as quick as I can, so I'm going to subtract 8x from both sides. The result there is 2 plus 2x is greater than or equal to, this zeroes out and leaves 16. Now I want to start isolating this x term, so I'm going to subtract this positive 2 from both sides. The result there is 2x is greater than or equal to 14. And finally, we'll just divide both sides by 2. So x is greater than or equal to 7. That's our final answer for this problem. There, we finally got one box the first time correctly. Alright, this is our last problem in this section. We're still solving inequalities. Let's go ahead and get all the m's on one side. So I'm going to subtract 18m from both sides right away. The result there, 4m minus 18 is negative 14m. I still have that minus 3, less than or equal to, and on this side I'll just have the 11. That's an 11. Now let's go ahead and add 3 to both sides. The result there, negative 14m is less than or equal to 11 plus 3 is 14. We're going to divide both sides by that negative 14. And we're going to be careful with the sign, because remember, when we divide both sides of an inequality or multiply by a negative number here, then we have to flip the sign. So this less than or equal to becomes a greater than or equal to. This reduces down to m, and oops, this reduces down to negative 1. So our final answer here is m is greater than or equal to negative 1. I grabbed that wrong tool again. M is greater than or equal to negative 1. Alright, this first problem in solving compound inequalities is number 13. And they give us negative 12 is less than or equal to 2x minus 4 is less than 6. All we want to do is we want to treat this like it's a three-sided type of equation or inequality. And I'm trying to get x by itself in the middle. So I've got a 2x minus 4 in the middle. I'd like to end up with just an x in the middle. So I'm going to do the steps I would normally do to get x by itself. I'm going to add 4 and divide by 2. But when I do that, I'm not just doing it to two sides. I'm doing it to like three sides of this compound inequality. So my first step is to add 4. So if I add 4 here, I also have to do it to the right and the left. Let's see the result there. Negative 12 plus 4 is negative 8. Is less than or equal to, the only thing left in the middle now is just 2x. And that's less than 6 plus 4 is 10. Alright, I want to get the 2 off the x, and the way to do that is to divide by 2. So if I divide by 2 in the middle, I have to do that everywhere. The result here, negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4, is less than or equal to x. That's what I was trying to do, is get x by itself in the middle, is less than 10 divided by 2 is 5. So we're done. We have gotten x by itself in the middle. We've solved the compound inequality. X is some number between negative 4 and 5, and it could be negative 4 with the or equal on that end. That's it. Alright, that brings us to the last question on this exam. It's the same topic, compound inequalities. We're trying to get x by itself in the middle. Let's go ahead and add 10 so we can begin that process. Again, what do we do in the middle? We have to do to both ends. And the result here is, let's clean that up. The result here is negative 10 plus 10 is 0. That's less than, the only thing left in the middle now is 4x. That's good. That's less than 6 plus 10 is 16. To get the x by itself, we're going to have to divide the 4 away. So dividing 4 here forces us to divide 4 on both ends. And just calculate results here. 0 divided by 4 is 0. Is still less than, 4 is reduced out, I get x is less than, 16 divided by 4 is 4. That's it. We have isolated the x in the middle. X is some number between 0 and 4. So x is solved for. And we are done.